Hello folks, I'm Melly Little and this is your daily TA Wrap. Where we take a look at these markets. We do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves what happened today and what might it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live here at 9 o'clock Eastern Time from the base of a little bit of rain falling Rocky Mountains. We talked last night about the fact that this market was going to try to pop up today, and that's what it did. It's going to try to test the tops, and that is also what it did. But funny thing happened on the way. The bank sold off by the end of the day, was unable to hold those highs, and we had some decent amount of selling start to creep back in. And if we look at what transpired, when we get into it here, we're going to see that the prognosis for tomorrow looks to be down, and that's going into the Fed meeting. So that's going to be an interesting setup. Dow was down the most, 0.42. It was down the second most, I guess. Here's the S&P's down 0.5. So almost 9 points on the S&P, closing back in on that 1950 area. This is kind of a critical area right here, because if you get much lower, you're going to start breaking some lows, and we'll look at those charts here in a second. Elsewhere, silver pretty flat, gold pretty flat, down about 1/3%. Really not that much happening anywhere else. Strength continues in the dollar. So markets trying to work back to the top side today, and if we go to look at the charts, we can see that high today on the S&P, 1984.85. That was going back into the top of this breakdown bar, which is 1981, over yesterday's high. Trying to get to the top of this high, which is the retest regenerate zone. 1985.59 got to 1984.85. So as you can see, it was unable to retest and regenerate, and then what happened tonight, it actually broke down up underneath it. So tomorrow becomes a critical day, and it becomes critical because usually if you get another bar down here and you don't get back inside that zone, all of a sudden you've changed it to a range trade at best. And so that breakout is over, right? And then you're coming back the other way. So here we go, lots of swing points, lows lined up, right? There's really, if I'm fearful of the market, I'm fearful for one thing, and that is that there really isn't much up underneath it. And what I mean by that is this market has been up so long and so far that, and I've talked about this before, it has a long way to fall before it finds anything. If you look at where the TA Today charts are marking in support, it's another 100 points down. I mean, it's a long way. That is a pretty good clip. It's down, it's 5%. 5% to find support is probably going to freak people out if it doesn't. And it probably should freak people out, because if it did that, what would it be doing? Well, it'd be coming back in and potentially trying to change an intermediate term time frame low. So at this particular point, it's just a question of, does it stay down here, try to trade lower? The setup tonight, just like the setup last night, was to try to trade higher. It did, and it failed. Setup tonight is to try to trade lower, and we'll see what it does. You got a swing point low, 1960. You're at 69. 10 points down, you start breaking a swing point. We haven't broke a swing point low in what, about 4 months? It's been quite a while. I don't even know if we broke one in 4 months. And that's a sideways. Yeah, there was a sideways one. So anyway, that's the S&Ps. If we look at the Dow, Dow kind of set up the same way. It tried to get higher, just like we were talking about as well. Flips around, closes, and it breaks right down through support. That low is 16,920, closes underneath it. This looks to go lower. Swing point low here, 16,805. 100 points down. That's the Dow. Composite. So if we go to the Nasdaq, on the Nasdaq we have the same sort of scenario where this thing was trying to push higher, trying to get back up, test those highs. And this one actually closed 44.4270. Yeah, it actually closed inside that breakdown bar again. You know, this has been kind of the key bar that it's been gyrating around, and it's kind of been the one we've been watching. It's back inside of it. Closes back up underneath it there. That's going to try to test lower. And so tomorrow we'll see if it can test lower or not. The thing that you'd want to watch now is how does it deal with bars of significance like swing point bars. And for example, there's a swing point low here, there's the high, it's going to try to get into it. There's another swing point low over here, the high is there, it's going to try to get into that one as well, right? The high on this low's bar is 44.15, the high on this low's bar is 44.34. We're only 8 points away. That's like a drop in the bucket. So again, we're lining up swing point lows. That's the way they typically line up when you're going sideways. So if you look at it and you ask yourself, okay, what happens if we start to break lower? You know, how far could we break? If I'm looking at this, that low is 43.39, which is, you know, it's 100 points away. 100 points on 4,400, it's not that big a percentage. You break 3 swing point lows. Matter of fact, there's another one right back here. You know, you're starting to break some more serious material, and if you do that, you know, then you're going to go after other lows. That low on the weekly, 42.04, and I've talked about this before ad nauseum. You know, and I know it gets old, but these things are so stretched, folks. I mean, they're so stretched beyond belief. Resets needed extremely bad, and it wouldn't be bearish, it would actually be bullish to get resets, more than likely, especially if they came fast and furious, right? Because then you could actually get the reset. You know, let's just say we came down here, you got a swing point low at this high now. You know, that's not that far of a drop before you find support. You know, so you drop 200 points, you find support, and if you do it right, you know, bang, 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 it's almost going to necessarily find support down there. Of course, on this particular one, yeah, actually it's already tested once, so that would be the area. That's the Nasdaq, the NDX. On the daily, we don't have a failure because we actually had higher volume today. And so the NDX again just looks like it doesn't want to give it up. If it does start to give it up, it's got support right here at the top. 39.33, 39.42. You're 17 points away, which isn't anywhere. This would simply be a retest regen if and when it finally comes back. And this would be, being the strongest index, this would be the one you'd want to watch to see how it trades when it gets there, if it gets there. 200 points down, that would be a pretty good hit on the weekly. The Russell is the one that can't move, and the Russell couldn't move again today. It tried to trade higher. The tops of these bars, 1150, 1152, it got to 1149. Pushes up, has some decent volume, but volume's not as heavy as what was there, fails, turns around. This one's going to go down and try to test again to the lows. This already is in a bearish trend. If we look at it on the weekly, if it starts to break, it's got swing point lows all lined up just like we looked at the others. You got multiples. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, all almost in the same price zone, which is that support zone. If it comes down there and it breaks them, there ain't nothing below it. There just isn't nothing below it. I mean, you'd have to go all the way back to like 890s or so to find support. Well, not to find support, to find a retest regen zone. Something where something of significance took place. That's a long way down. And I don't even want to think about that because that's so far out of the picture right now. But this is the critical area, right? Because if you break these, you usually get a fast 2 to 3 bar move. This is a weekly, so you get 2 to 3 weeks to the downside. And if you did that, I would think just looking at this chart, your target's going to be back around 1,000 again. So you could drop 10% again here. So that's a pretty good piece on the downside. But first things first, let's just see if we can actually get a pullback that lasts more than about 4 hours, right? Let's pop over and look at the sectors together. And I'm kind of winging this tonight because I didn't really do any prep tonight. I was watching the markets pretty close today, so I have a good idea of what took place. But at the same time, I didn't run through the charts yet. So IYT, so it's back inside the range. UPS came out, earnings not nearly what was expected, and that kind of led this guy to come to the downside. You had the higher range, the lower range, and the middle range, and you're in the middle range, and it looks like it's going to go for the low of the range now. So this has been an extremely powerful move to the upside. So a retrace here definitely, it's not going to kill anything, but definitely needed actually. So this broke today. So here's the next one. Remember, we've talked about, you broke a swing point low today. We've talked about the fact that when one or two start to trade lower, then pretty soon you have a bunch of them doing that. And so if I look at the current trends, and I've shown this before, you have a bearish here on the IWM, a sideways, and a bearish and a sideways. So you actually have, and I didn't pick up on this, but you actually have another one. Looks like Staples went to sideways last night. So now you have 4. Well, tonight you got 5. And as they slowly start rolling, they'll all roll. And so, one thing that you can simply watch, whether you want to listen to me or not, is you can watch these trends, and when about 2 or 3 of them start to roll, you can expect the rest of them probably to roll. That's usually the way it happens, and that's true to the upside, and it's true to the downside. And here's another one tonight. So another confirmation that we've got some issues. The SOX tried to push up today, was up early, and gave it all back up, closed lower. That one wants to go lower. The XLB comes off those highs. Remember, it just set a high yesterday. Comes off those highs, wide price spread comparatively. That one's going to come back inside the range. XLE. Okay, so this one now, if it breaks again, it's going to break to a bearish trend. And we've only got one in a bearish trend, which is the industrials. We'll look at that one next. But this does look like it's going to take a shot at the lows again. Financials. And the financials, I didn't like the way that looked last night, so they did trade up over it, back underneath it. They did fail finally. This one's going to retrace. Industrials. This is the one that's bearish, and it just blew it away again tonight. This one's going for the lows now. Let's look at it on the weekly. So this would be, now it's still got a long ways to go to get back to the weekly lows because it never was able to set up a higher one. 50.74, that's quite a ways away still. And it looks like it's going to head for it though. You got some support about 52.30, which is right here. So this will be where it targets. Probably gets a bounce off of there, sets up another ABC structure and tries to go after it. XLK. Okay, so he goes over the top, back underneath, more volume. I take that back. It actually is a 2-bar reversal off yesterday's highs and off that high. So actually you got the reversal tonight. You finally got the reversal in technology. That looks to come lower. XLP, we just saw change trend. Yep, changed right there night before last, or actually last night, and went after the lows and broke them. So now this, so this is going to go bearish. So that's the second one to go bearish. XLU has got 2 swing point lows laying up underneath there. It looks like it's going to come back after them. This is looking pretty bearish, more bearish than I thought. We're set up here. I wonder if they, you got two big numbers tomorrow. XLV held up with biotech. XLY really couldn't do anything. You got two big numbers tomorrow. You got the Fed, and if you just think about it, and a lot of times I like to think about, okay, what can happen on the news? In the case of the Fed, is there an upside surprise or a downside surprise? What's more likely? Well, you got to think the downside surprise is more likely because everybody expects another tapering and more of the same. Same language, everything. I can't imagine that they're going to get where they say something about they're going to put out more money again. I mean, I just don't see that, right? So that's like off the table. So the upside surprise just isn't there. The only surprise you get would be downside. So the risk is to the downside. That's the way I like to say it. If I look at the GDP that's coming out tomorrow, maybe that's the surprise. That comes out early in the morning. Maybe that's the one that these markets are discounting already tonight. Let's look at the OX markets together here, see what we got there. And so I saw the euro trading down again. Let's take a quick peek at it. Yeah, it's just stretching down. It already broke multiple swing points on multiple time frames. Usually you can expect it's about a 92%, or actually I think it's 90. It's probably the highest probability trade that's out there. And this one's going to stretch into this low. That's where it's heading. 131.74. You're at 132, another 50 cents. Dollar going the opposite direction. Let's take a quick look at it. So it's just stretching higher. Yeah, and this one looks like it's going to stretch for a while. So maybe the other countries that are part of that, 50% is the euro, but if it's the others, maybe the others are going to contribute. Oil coming back down. I saw UNL breaking towards the lows here today. So they tested into this low, 1742, and they reversed off of it. Tested. It closed at 1741 though. So it's an under-over after an extended move on a test. Did close under it. That's a negative, but you're like within a penny. So looks to me like you're going to get a shot for a bounce here and probably try to get back into this low or the top of this bar. Now, that's a pretty good move if it does it. So this is not a bad place if you're playing that market to take a shot. TLT up, new highs, folks. This thing won't give it up. Over the highs, starting to stretch again. That's an ABCD structure up, and it's starting to stretch. So the bonds are also echoing the idea that the market's going to have some difficulty. Silver and gold, they couldn't move inside day again on silver. Nothing really there. Let's see what gold looked like. Also an inside day. And just couldn't get anything going. And let me take a quick look at the junk bonds because these guys have been selling off. And they're going to go after their lows too. Okay, let's look at the world markets. So I know that last night they traded up again. And I didn't really get to see what the volumes looked like or the charts. So let's pop through them and see what they look like. All ordinaries, back to the highs, tries to test. It's probably going to test the high tonight. And it looks to me like it's going to fail there. It was just slightly short of it. India. This one's going to come back down finally. Looks like I didn't get a quote there today though. So I can't really judge that one. That's not a good quote. Okay, so the Bovespa finally coming back in. The big bar, it's into it. It'll try to trade back towards the low. So that one's actually coming back in. Toronto. Switching over to Toronto. 1503, tested the highs. Less volume, that's a failure at the highs. That one should try to pull in. Let's go to the 8 shares, Hong Kong. Okay, so 1150. They're going to try to test the highs tonight again. I suspect, the more bullish case is you just come off here and you don't test them. If they do test and fail, they can get a little bit deeper of a pullback. That still looks like a good market on a pullback. Hang Seng just skyrockets again. I don't see anything stopping that one yet, other than the fact that it's very extended now. Let me see what the weekly is and the monthly. It's over everything. It's over everything, all monthlies. It's 5-year highs as of last night. Korea was skyrocketing as well. Let's see what it did. Also skyrocketing over the highs. So you got 2052, and you're going to have volume. You're going to have volume too. So Korea's still looking pretty good. Taipei has been struggling as chip country, and that one's going to come back and test the lows. And Indonesia was breaking out as well, and that's a test. And I got a bad bar here. I need to try to check on that quote. That's a test of the highs last night, though. It looks like it will try again. Let me go over to Europe, because Europe, we've got more sanctions on Russia, and the rhetoric just keeps building there. Let me see. I got to go to France. Let me go to France. Okay, so France tries to trade up, still weak. That really doesn't tell us anything. The FTSE, that's a test failure at the highs. FTSE looks to come back in. DAX. Let's get the DAX up, and the DAX can't get up either. So Europe looks weak. Asia, most of those markets starting to trade back in. Our markets look like they want to trade back in. The sectors definitely look that way. We're starting to see the roll in the sectors. If you think about it, there's a bottoms up or a tops down. You can look at it either way. We've been seeing over and over, more and more. I mean, I went through today, I do this daily. I went through today, I pulled up all on the watch list, I pulled up, and I actually did a video on this today. You ought to check it out. I pulled up all of the earnings, right, for today. I went through them. Folks, there was one bullish chart out of all the earnings from yesterday. One chart that was bullish that I could put into this list. And there was about 19 that were bearish. That gives you a flavor of what this market's doing. And if you want to understand what I'm talking about and you haven't done it yet, or you're not familiar with it, just pop in here and listen to the video. You know, what can I say? This market doesn't want to give it up. But if you can't get enough stocks participating, it will give it up. It will not have a choice. It will have to give it up. And that's slowly what it's setting up to do. All right, let's see if we got some questions. I've got a few minutes here. You can always type into the text box there, and I'll pick it up there. You can email me, or you can text me. Any of those work. So let me see here. No messages, and nothing up there, and nothing here. Okay, well, let me talk about what I want to talk about then. So if I go over and look at some of these earnings reports that came out tonight, you had some that went spectacularly higher, right? And let's look at a couple of them. So, like, you know, the news tonight was Twitter. Let's take a look at Twitter. TWTR, I believe. So Twitter was up like 30% after hours. And let me get it up here on the weekly, TWTR. It was trading up around 40 something. I think it was around 46. So all Twitter is going to do is come into these lows. There's a 49. So the first one is at 45. And that's where the swing point high is. So that will be the first test, is like, can you get over about 45? If you can get over 45, you know, then you can make a run up to 50. But I don't think Twitter's going anywhere. Yeah, it had some decent volume here, left a big high volume low. I wouldn't trust this guy at all. Another one that nobody probably follows is a stock that I follow. It's called Zeltiq. There's aesthetics. They actually produce this unique product for hair loss, and it's a laser comb. This thing was up 40, I think it was 35% tonight on earnings, it looked like. takes it back up to 21, swing point high there. It gets it back into the big bar, and this one has a high volume high. So I would think this thing tries to run to 25, right? Back and test that high before it's over with. The first test will be the 21 area, which is where it was trading tonight. If it gets over it, it's going back to 25. Those are the kinds of things that pop up on my earnings list. I take a look at them, let them trade for a day so that I can see what they're doing. And then for members, that shared watch list is available. And the numbers are pretty astounding. And again, if you want to look at that video, you can take a look at it and see what I'm talking about. Okay, well, if no questions, I'm going to probably leave it at that tonight. Go off and do a little bit more work and call it a night. I appreciate you joining me. Have yourself a great night. Thanks. Take care of yourself.